What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale, once again joined by Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of Forbes fame, and of OnlyFans celebrity. Be on the lookout for his blend of naughty / NBA crossover content.
Yes,
we are here to talk about the Miami Heat beginning another offseason of what the hell do we do now? Where do we go? I find every team fascinating. I say this about every team. When we do look ahead, I'm like, oh, this team is so fascinating. Mort, well, before we get started, how are you doing since we last talked like 5 seconds ago?
doing well. Feeling slightly worse that we're talking about the Miami Heat. Yes.
So Miami, they're about $9.3 million below the luxury tax. That's not including a potential new deal for Davion Mitchell, who is a restricted free agent and was turned out to be pretty important to them and pretty good for them, to be fair.
By the way, mea culpa on that, because you and I spoke about Davion Mitchell, I want to say a month ago, where I was very dismissive of him. I was like, yeah, sure, he's doing well in like March. Like, who cares? I was very dismissive. I'm owning up to it. God, was I wrong? Like, he's doing this in a playoff setting in important games. I thought this was just like one of those, I've just gotten to a new team sort of reinnovation for a small period of time. This actually looks sustainable. So good on you, Davion Mitchell, for proving my ass wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have even predicted this lasting or him having even close to the type of impact he had. He's been able to do stuff offensively, whereas you look at Chris Dunn for the Clippers and you worry about him not being able to do some of the stuff that Davion Mitchell's been able to do for Miami. That just makes it harder to figure out, well, what does the next contract look like? I assume just because this is sort of a recent breakout, it's not going to exceed like far above the mid-level, would be my guess.
I mean, he's currently shooting above, or well, not above, just under 70% in the playoffs and averaging 17 points per game. Whatever is going to happen, his agent is going to squeeze that for all it's worth. So, we'll see.
I think that the cap landscape would be in favor of the Heat keeping him no matter what, but they have to ask themselves, are we willing to go into attacks for a core of Bam, Tyler Hero, Khalil Ware, and Davion Mitchell? Either like they're I'm just being tongue-in-cheek there. Bam Adebayo, after his extension, he's going to be under contract for another 4 years and $202.4 million. Tyler Hero has 2 years and $64 million left on his deal. If you're looking at this team getting better, they can trade, I believe, up to 2 first-round picks outright because they owe their 2027 first to Charlotte with top 2 protection. And so they can conditionally trade a 29 and a 2031 pick, and that's it. Their 2025 pick is headed to OKC this year. They do have, though, what could be some sizable expiring contracts. Terry Rozier, the weirdest partial guarantee I've ever seen. He's guaranteed like 95%. He's being guaranteed. So they'll have him. Duncan Robinson has an ETO, so maybe he could be a free agent. I don't think he'll opt out or exercise that. And then Andrew Wiggins has a 26-27 player option. In theory, then he could be an expiring contract. So they do have money that they could use to, match salaries in a larger trade. I think the playoffs, and this was true before the Jimmy trade, it's kind of just reinforced, right? This team needs I think Tyler Hero has improved a bunch. I want to make that clear. They need a best offensive player, though. That is what they need. And I don't know where they go out and get that player. Like, maybe you could identify some names that would be interesting, but do they have the assets to get them?
I don't think they do. And that's why I am taking a pretty harsh approach to this team. They made it to the playoffs, which means they're not going to relinquish the 2026 unprotected to OKC. That's a win. They got to, look, they got to restart this whole thing. I'm not saying take a sledgehammer, but I'm also saying let's not take a sledgehammer. Like, you can get a ton in return for Bam Adebayo, even with the extension kicking in, but you probably have to do it now while he's like slap dab middle in his prime. Like, that's right now. Those are the years right now. Tyler Hero is going to have 2 years left on his deal come summertime. You want to get him out the door before that goes down to 1 year, because then we're always looking at that situation where a team is like, oh, but we're only getting him for 1 playoff year. That's not a whole lot. That value diminishes. I think you got to press that big red button and see what comes up. What's unfortunate, of course, is they don't necessarily have their own picks. They're in a situation where they don't control their own outcome. So it's like there are more and more teams like this out there, I feel like, where they've shipped out so many of their draft picks, meaning they don't really control their own future, and now they have to play catch up because they're just stuck. The Heat are one of them. So if they can't control their own picks, they have to control outside picks. That's the only thing I come up with, because running this back, my question is, to what end? Like, even if you go out and get a guy via the draft picks that you mentioned, is that a guy who's good enough to be the number one guy on that team? Is that someone who can come in and be like a perennial all-star for them? No. Like, what's the alternative?
So I'm actually, I think you could argue that it's actually more appealing for them to blow it up than even you're giving them credit for, just because it's really, they're losing this year's pick, which is outside the lottery. That's not nothing, but it's okay. It's
Right.
the 2027 pick. And so you could, in theory, say to whatever team wants Bam, you go out, you find out what it takes to get
Right.
that pick from Charlotte, and you include
Yep.
it in the package for Bam. Maybe
Yep.
Charlotte's even the team that wants to go out and trade for Bam. With like, who knows
Good
right
idea.
here? I probably would explore that like you would. I can't picture, maybe if we know that Pat Riley no longer has a say, and I know Andy Ellisberg does a lot of the heavy lifting there, but this team is kind of operated under the mantra of we don't rebuild.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I don't think they're going to look at that, but I think you're asking the right question. It's, if you can get better, to what end are you
Yep.
getting better? And I don't know, like I'll throw a couple names out to you that could,
Okay.
in theory, be on their radar. I think you have to ask two questions. And the first one is that player good enough to say, all right, we're playing for something in the East, home court advantage in the East? And then two, does Miami have the assets to get
To go
that
get
player
him.
without trading Bam Adebayo?
Okay. Oh, okay. That's a good one. Yep.
The first name that comes up, and it has to come up, would be Trae Young.
So the deal is probably Tyler Hero.
Picks, other
Picks.
salary.
It's interesting. I'm going to give you that it's interesting. But at the end of the day, if you give up Tyler Hero as well, you're forcing Bam to be more of an offensive, influencer in some capacity. Can he do that? Is Trae Young, Bam Adebayo, I guess Andrew Wiggins and Kel'el Ware?
Maybe Atlanta wants Wiggins instead of Hero. Who knows?
Oh, that changes the calculus for me a little bit, though. If you can get that, if you can get off, or not get off Wiggins, because I don't think that sounded negative. I actually think Wiggins is good. But if you can get Trae for the Wiggins contract, and I get Kyle Anderson, let's actually find the deal, right? It's got to be Wiggins, Anderson, I guess, and Highsmith.
Or, you could have, there's Rozier's expiring money, there's Robinson's expiring money.
Yeah, then you can expand the trade. All right. And then the two picks.
I think the two picks, especially if you're not including Hero, would have to be in there, right?
Right. Yeah, if you're not including Hero, I agree. So that leaves you with a leading trio of Trae, Tyler Hero, and Bam. That's intriguing. I'm left with the same question, Dan. To what end? Like, is that a team that I trust over Cleveland? Is that a team I trust over Boston? Is that a team I put pretty much at the same level of New York?
I do think that if they, for some reason, figure out a way to have an above-average offense while playing Trae Young and Tyler Hero together, which they figured out how to have an above-average offense, defense is what I meant,
Okay.
while having liabilities on the floor in the past, that gets interesting. But I think that's what's fun about, I'm not even endorsing it, but it's,
right.
Okay, can you get Trae Young? Sure. Is it for what you would have to give up to get him? Does it make sense to get him? And that's where it gets debatable, which comes back to your question. I probably don't think, because the opportunity cost kind of feels not that great, but then it's also like, well, Trae Young needs a new deal, so we're going to get mega expensive.
Right.
I don't think I'm looking at that. So I'll continue to throw names here.
Okay.
Zach LaVine, with the precursor of Scott Perry's now in charge in Sacramento. He did not trade for him. There's actually people brought back up the video of Scott Perry saying that Zach LaVine is overpaid and doesn't provide enough value for what he is paid. He has since said that him and Zach LaVine have talked about it and hashed it out. the Kings can go a bunch of different directions, but Zach LaVine is that guy where he's really good, and you're not including after matching money. I'm assuming you're not including everything to get him.
He's basically a better Tyler Hero.
Tyler Hero's probably a better passer than him at this point. I'm not going to lie.
Better passer, but LaVine's efficiency is no one's talking about it because he played for Chicago and Sacramento this year, so rightfully so. Efficiency was ridiculous. I think he ended up in like the mid-60s true shooting percentage, high volume as well. They definitely get better offensively there because of the efficiency. Like Sac has this weird reputation, both in the league and the media, I feel like, where he's like a chucker who's like inefficient, where he's like the exact opposite. The offensive injection there would be fun alongside Bam, but at the end of the day, you're not racing. You're sealing a whole ton. Like, okay, you're replacing Tyler Hero with Zach LaVine because they sure as heck can't play together. Is that upgrade enough to even warrant such a trade? I'm not sure. Like, then I'd probably just rather gamble on Hero, who's 5 years younger.
I guess if more so is what I was saying, what if Sacramento just wanted like Wiggins and another expiring salary, and you're not giving up picks to get Zach LaVine was more so my point.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, there's still then we still need a follow-up move because the positional overlap between Hero and LaVine is yucky.
Yeah, neither of those. I don't know. Tyler Hero's had some really good moments against the Cavs, but still. The other name, well, I have a couple other names.
Okay.
LaMelo Ball, your favorite.
And you're asking me of all people. No, I think Pat Riley would go absolutely bananas after the first couple practices.
For what the Heat can give up, if you could get LaMelo Ball, I'm not going to lie, I'd be tempted because they just can't give up a ton.
Perhaps that's the place for LaMelo to iron out his poor habits. I'll
Miami, South Beach, yeah, go ahead. That's the.
Well, not the city. I meant the organization, but you raise a fair point.
What about, we'll go to the other end of this because we just talked about those two players. Not an instinctive fit, but again, probably doesn't cost you everything.
Okay.
Zion Williamson.
Okay, now we're talking. That's fun. Now we're into this might actually be fun territory. So what's the deal?
Oh, hold on. If you don't think LaMelo Ball is the answer for a team, or you have, that's fine. You can't tell me LaMelo Ball and Bam Adebayo wouldn't make for fun basketball. I refuse.
We've been through this several times, you and I. I do not find LaMelo Ball entertaining in the slightest. I find him infuriatingly frustrating.
We got aggregated on Twitter the other day from that conversation. I don't know if you saw it, and it was the responses. They clearly had no idea the tenor of the conversation because they were saying we were both wrong, and we were arguing like there was one of two answers, and we were arguing in opposite sides of them, and so that's how we were both wrong.
It was I laughed at that a great deal. I actually forgot to share it with you because I did see it, but no, yeah, people are weird. Look.
Oh, I have no problem getting aggregated. I find
no, me neither. Zion, when healthy, at least when I'm saying fun, I do mean like in terms of the production, right? Like when he's healthy, he's right up there. Like he's up there among the best. Like he is so highly influential. He's gotten better as a rebounder. He's gotten better defender. It's all about the lack of availability. And you can say the same about LaMelo too. Like both those guys are like tremendously unavailable. But I do think Zion provides the higher ceiling than LaMelo, and significantly so, just off the impact there. That would be fun because he would actually have that type of center. Like, remember, I've said this a couple times, where I thought the Pelicans should have gone out of their way to find a way to get Kel'el Ware because I think that's the player you need to put alongside Zion. Well, Kel'el Ware is in Miami, and you know who's also is? Bam Adebayo. Bam Adebayo has also begun to stretch the floor. He's also a lob threat. He's also a defender, rebounder. Now you have two guys who are like tailor-made to be alongside Zion.
My guess is, and maybe the Pelicans feel differently with Yves Missi being there, but if you're not trading Tyler Hero, I think Kel'el Ware is certainly in the Zion Williamson.
That's fair. Okay. Yeah, I can buy that. I can accept that. But as long as they still have Bam, I'll live with it. I still love the idea of Kel'el Ware alongside Zion though. But like, yeah, Bam is better. I get that. If you run that, let's run that back, by the way. If they offer one of the picks instead of Kel'el Ware,
So you're thinking New Orleans is just going to dump Zion for a first round pick and Andrew Wiggins and Kyle Anderson?
Maybe 2 picks. They can offer 2, right?
I mean, if it's just the picks and then money, sign me up.
Right. I mean, again, I don't know. I don't think anybody really knows what Zion's value is right now, especially now that Joe Dumars is leading the whole thing there. We have no idea. Like, the Pelicans have just turned everything inside out. Now they're making evaluations, their own evaluations of where they stand with certain players. Like, we sort of had an idea of how David Griffin thought of Zion for a long time. Like, he wasn't keen on trading him. He was buying into the upside. Is Joe Dumars doing that same thing? We have no idea. Like, there might be an organizational shift where they are thinking, no, you know what? Like, Zion's not available. We don't think highly of him. Let's just get out of that whole situation where, you know, you could look at 2 picks from Miami where David Griffin would probably, you know, tell Miami to shove it. Joe Dumars might be telling them, tell me more.
Well, remember the initial reporting was, and that's since moved back. I want to make it clear, was
Right,
that
yes.
part of the stipulation was Joe Dumars needed to move on from Zion Williamson, which is just, I think that's a dumb stipulation because his contract, just given the number of outs, is not toxic. And by the way, you think the Heat would be in there trying to renegotiate the weight limit protection, where I think now he needs to be less than 295. The Heat are going to be like, you need to be less than 275 or something. They would definitely try and do that.
220, yeah.
220. Oh my God.
Look, it's the Heat, right? Heat culture. No, but that would be fun. Like, that's probably the one name where I can talk myself into, all right, let's try to keep this going in some capacity.
Good. I'm not endorsing any of these. I'm just trying to make us think. I have a couple other names.
Okay.
Kevin Durant.
Again, he'd be so fun
in
there.
That trade, it's the picks and it's salary. Like, you're keeping Hero and Bam and Ware.
Look, when you're trading draft picks for a guy who's like that old, it's like you have to put yourself in a situation where you can win a championship. I don't think you do that with Durant necessarily, as much as I love him.
That's probably the most of all the names we mentioned, though. That would be the most instinctual trio, right? With Tyler Hero, KD, and Bam, right?
Yeah, because look, I still subscribe to the idea that if you want to run with like the 3-star setup, it is ultimately the best to have like a main guard, a main wing, and a main big. So yes, absolutely. That would work.
What about Ja Morant?
No, thank you.
I figured that was going to be a quick no. Now, this is kind of on the smaller side, but it enables you to keep a lot of your roster intact. Coby White.
Yeah, absolutely. Immediately, because again, the salary alone is so easy to overcome
for 1 year.
That's the thing, and because it's 1 year, the Bulls can't even make first and foremost, they're shitty negotiators, but they can't even make the argument that they're going to have him, you know, for longer than that 1 year. The Bulls should have traded them at the trade deadline. They did not. So now you're left in that situation where you're going to the summer. If you're fielding offers from White, everyone's going to say, well, he's not locked up for a long time. And we have to go into the same situation as you, where we can't offer him an extension because the 140% extension limit exists. All right. That lowers the price tag. I'm sorry, but it just does. That's a name where Miami can actually, whether they rebuild or retool or not, or stay the course, they can still go get his ass.
Would you do, let's just say no picks are involved. It's just a matter of matching the money because they want to get out of this contract. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Not sure yet. No.
Paul George. I don't even know. Maybe the Sixers say no, but as an exercise, you're just giving up. You're sending out contracts to make the money work, roping in whatever other teams you need.
No.
I would do it. You're out of your mind.
Why?
No picks?
Well, like, okay, so no picks, and I still get to overpay him for the next 4 years. Lucky me.
3
years. 3. Sorry, also, I corrected myself, sir.
Hold on. And 2 of those are important to be semi-competitive. I guess if you want to do a 1-year tank, sure. But at least 2027, you need to be as good as possible right now because your pick is headed out. So, like, and Paul George, he didn't ruin the Sixers tank this year. He always misses some games. So if you want to do the 1-year tank and run it back with, age 45 Paul George in 2026 and that top end draft pick, if you don't
realize
have
that Paul
picks,
George is turning 35 in like 3 days, right?
Right. Here's my thing. If Philly just decided they don't want that contract and they're willing to take Terry Rozier plus whatever money, like maybe it's Terry Rozier and Andrew Wiggins, I might consider it.
Of course. I mean, look, yeah. If you're Miami, I wouldn't consider it. Of course, you as the Sixers, if that's what it takes to get off that horrible.
From Miami's perspective, why?
Yeah, I know, but like that's such a win for Philly. It's insane.
Andrew Wiggins could technically have an extra year left on his deal. So you're saying you'd rather just be out of the Paul George business? You're so out on Paul George.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen this guy this year? And you expect him to get better? He's the injury history, the age.
There's a higher baseline. It's not that I expect Paul George to go to Miami and have a career year. There's a much higher baseline than what he's working off of from this season.
Are we sure there still is?
Yes. I think Paul George is one of the most plug-and-play stars in the league.
Great. That worked out so well for Philly in the 41 games he played this year.
First of all, how many games would he have played in if Philly actually had anything to play for? That is a fair question.
Still, the production level dropped like a rock.
I think if you're going to focus on why Miami shouldn't do that, I think the plot is being missed if you don't say, well, we want a primary advantage creator. He comes in and we still favor Tyler Hero in that instance. And you're trying to get around that for the most part.
I understand. No, I understand your argument just fine. It's the contract that scares the bejesus out of me.
I think if it's costing me, because Terry Rozier doesn't even look like he should be an NBA player. And maybe he comes back and is great. But if it's costing me that, and then Andrew Wiggins technically has 2 years left on his deal, and just you can't, unless he's going to turn the clock back to 2022, which is the anomaly on his career resume, you're kind of can look at it and talking to yourself in, all right, well, it's really like 2 years of Paul George, like being extra on the weight.
I think Andrew Wiggins right now is the better basketball player.
Oh, sorry, I can't. Has Andrew Wiggins
we had Snob Dan show up there. Okay, fair enough.
To me, if you're saying Andrew Wiggins had the better season, I don't think that's arguable. I think you're right.
Right.
If you're asking me who I would just rather have in a vacuum next year, if you want to, I guess, okay, Andrew Wiggins is making what, $20 million less than Paul George or whatever. That's probably fair. But as players in a vacuum next season, I would say that I want Paul George on my team rather than Andrew Wiggins.
That's fair. I'm Wiggins. I don't, because again, I'm also baking in availability. That's part of it.
What is the argument? So then what is the argument for Andrew Wiggins as the better basketball player? Just that you're
no. So first and foremost, the production level I think is comparable. First and foremost, I think Wiggins, because he's younger, I think he's found his game at a much higher sense this year than we've seen before. I think we can throw last year and parts of the year before out because there was a lot of personal things that went on and people were way too quick to kind of rule him out, like saying, oh, he can't play anymore, he's peaked, whatever. We're seeing this year that was a bunch of bullshit, okay? I think there's a very good two-way player in there. I think his three-point shot has gotten better. Yes, is Paul George a better primary creator? Absolutely. I'm not going to dispute that. But there is a time when someone reaches an age and they have that 1 year drop off. I think, and that's like the new norm. I'm not sure we can rule that out, that was the year for PG this year. Like, I'm also not saying it was with absolute certainty. There's a world wherein you could absolutely be right. But if this was the drop off year and that trend is only going to continue, like he's only going to get worse, I will not in any way sit here and argue on behalf of him over Wiggins. Sorry.
I think I would feel very uneasy about the Paul George creation aspect, like I said before, because if he comes in, I think you still look at Tyler Hero as your best advantage creator, and that's somewhat problematic, but the balance of 1-3-5. I guess I'm looking at it as if you're trying to swing for the fences as Miami rather than rebuild. I think if your highest end outcome is glitzier if you have Paul George versus if you have Andrew Wiggins. You could talk about the likelihood of reaching that highest end outcome. Yeah, let's say, I'll frame it this way. Let's say you're 70% likely to reach your highest end outcome with Andrew Wiggins and 20% likely to reach your highest end outcome with Paul George. The highest end outcome that you have a 20% chance at, I just think is going to be so much higher than that Andrew Wiggins highest end outcome that I'm just going to roll the dice because otherwise you're just kind of spinning your wheels in. This exact Miami team with some futzing and fiddling on the margins, how good are they next year? Can they get to 45 wins?
Yeah, not particularly, but I don't necessarily think they're going to be a lot better with Paul George. But what I do understand you're saying is that you want to swing. You want to swing big and you want to take some risk. I appreciate the ballsiness of that. I do. But the contract alone is toxic. And I don't think, like I said, necessarily that I think he's even an upgrade for Andrew Wiggins, although I do think he plucks more holes. That I will give you. But then there's the availability or lack thereof. Like, it's the combined package of question marks.
How many downloads does Andrew Wiggins' podcast do, Mort? This is all to say.
You got me there. You got me there. Dan, you won the argument.
This is all to say I wouldn't trade for Paul George if I was Miami. So we're arguing kind of over the same thing. I have a couple other names. Again, I actually don't think I might endorse one of these.
All right.
And I think his trade value would have had to drop for the Heat to be able to get him. Lauri Markkanen.
He is not
you probably have to go to Utah and say, maybe you could get away with not giving Kel'el Ware, but there's a chance that it's probably both those picks swaps, or is it Kel'el Ware a pick swap? It's something like that.
So it depends on what you think. So this is actually interesting. Do you subscribe to the idea that Lauri Markkanen can be a good first option?
Ask you another question. Would you have considered him? He was like a primary option as a play finisher. And I think he can do that.
That is a good answer because that is exactly what he is. So you were talking about play creation, right? How does Lauri Markkanen solve that? Well, especially at his salary.
I think he makes the jobs easier on Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo to where it's the advantage creation you get from them, which you want higher end of it because there's a higher threat level on the court who can give you a little bit of self-creation, but it's just a threat from anywhere. And is this like I can't remember who said this, so I apologize. And this isn't like a perfect comparison, but they compared Lauri Markkanen to a 7-foot Klay Thompson. Yep. It's just like, if you put that, I think by virtue of putting that on your roster, it increases the value of whatever self-creation and facilitation is already there.
Right. Can I just piggyback off of that one and give Ricky O'Donnell some love on this? Because even when Markkanen was in Arizona, Ricky O'Donnell back then, this was way back in 2017, basically said he's a 7-foot shooting guard. And I think that is probably the best description of Lauri Markkanen we've ever seen, and no one's really picked up on it, and that is exactly what his career has been. I love him as a play finisher. What I would worry about if I'm Miami, presumably I'm staying, I'm keeping this train moving because I want to make some noise in the playoffs. I wonder if, even if they do well in the regular season with him as a play finisher, making life easier on both Bam and Hero, is that going to be taken away in the playoffs? Because, I would imagine so.
I'm probably with you just because it would take most of your assets, and I don't think the payoff is there.
Right.
Would you rather give up your assets to get Lauri Markkanen or just give up money to get Paul George? Like contracts to get Paul George?
I'm just going to instead jump off of the highest cliff I find. Yeah.
So we have to mention this name. We mentioned it when we did our Bucks. Where are they going from here thing? You would do it, but we're in agreement. I don't see the path to the Heat keeping Bam Adebayo and getting Giannis Antetokounmpo is non-existent.
Right. No,
correct?
Nope.
Let's go back to a team. Excuse me. Maybe wanted to get off a contract. Again, I don't see it.
All right.
Joel Embiid.
Oh, see, that's at least more intriguing than PG. However, Embiid himself is like, no, I'm not going to play in back-to-backs anymore. Like, it's, you know what? I want to get there, but I can't, Dan. Like, I want to get there. No, I can't. It's too, again, I'm very risk averse. You know this of me. I can't take that leap. I can't commit. All right. I'll be fleeing the altar if I'm standing there. I won't do it. No. The
Now, this
contractual stuff is too much. The injury patterns are too much. I can't. Sorry.
even if it was just money and one first-round pick. And by
That
money, I
would
mean
go
contracts. For anyone who's thinking that I'm not Babe Ruthing this or like giving up just cash for Joel
right.
Embiid.
So it's like Wiggins, Duncan Robinson, and
Terry Rose, whatever the money, whatever
right.
contract
Terry
you just
Rozier,
that's not Hero or Bam.
Bam at the 4 would be fun next to Bede.
I think that, by the way, I think the Sixers only consider something like that if they win the lottery and it's let's reorient around Cooper Flag and Tyrese Maxey. We're done here.
I might get like you could talk me into that, but like the the potential downside again, it's catastrophic.
Oh yeah. Speaking of catastrophic.
Oh no, where are you coming with now?
This is another one where it's we don't want to give up assets to do this, so we're just trying to get better on the court. Bradley Beal.
I actually don't hate that as much. Again, I do. So here,
you just shit all over Paul George, like Bradley Beal with a no trade
caveat,
clause, sign me the fuck up.
Here's the thing. I don't hate Bradley Beal in a vacuum going there. However, because Tyler Hero is there, and I value him obviously significantly more than Bradley Beal, I don't buy into it because again, we've seen him now. He couldn't like the positional overlap. I think it's real with the shooting guards specifically. They have such a hard time finding their spots.
I think if you could get some, because I view Devin Booker as one of the most underrated passers in the league, but we've seen he has his limitations. He kind of needs a decision-making big is what he's best next to, not necessarily these flat out rim runners.
Right.
In Miami's case though, and this was similar with Devin Booker. So I think you would still probably want like a floor, like would Chris Paul come in and make whatever money and you're playing a little smaller. Tyler Hero can be so good off the ball that it's just like, I think it would feel less, not that Devin Booker can't be, but when you also have Kevin Durant in the fold and like Bam plays just a different position and is used to being a play finisher big when he's not having the ball, I think you can make it work. And again, I think it's all about the cost perspective of if you're just giving up contracts to make this work, like the Suns are doing it for Terry Rozier and I take your pick. You want Duncan Robinson or would you prefer to just give up Andrew Wiggins in that?
Like, I'm still saying no because I like, despite what you just outlined, I'm not necessarily buying into, Beal in a high volume ball handling capability. Like, I like him. I think it's interesting at the least. I think that's a situation where, the system would at least give him a chance to return to some level of what he used to be, but just not specifically alongside Tyler Hero. So I wouldn't do it.
Okay. I think you're not going to catch an argument from me on that. I have at least two more names jotted down.
I feel like you keep coming up with two more names. It's great.
Some of them are just springing to me. Okay. I'm just saying, because I don't know what's going to happen here. We already know this player wants to reevaluate his future.
Right.
Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, I had a feeling you'd go there.
I think I want to say this. I'm not necessarily in favor of it, but I think people would automatically assume, no, that would shrink the floor. And like, Domas been shooting the three pretty well the past couple seasons. We know Bam can give a little stretch. I don't think defenses would much care. But would we have ever seen? It's kind of like, I don't think that people are talking about, have we ever seen as much just like transcendent playmaking on one team as you could get in LeBron and Luka? Have we ever seen two playmaking bigs on the same team like Domas and Bam?
And also, you know what'd be funny is both of them are sort of reluctant scorers. Like, they can do so much more offensively than what they're doing. Like, Heat fans would lose their marbles after the first 2 months because both those guys are going to be like looking at each other. They're going to be averaging like a modest 17 per game, and everyone is just looking at it like, oh, nuts, one of you should average 25 because both have the capability of doing so. But like, at least Bam represents a much more intriguing big man pairing option for Sabonis than a lot of other alternatives around the league. Like, that might be the guy to pair up front with Sabonis, if anything.
I'd be interested to see how Spo uses them together, but I don't think I could get on board with that. I'm not going to lie.
It's going to be difficult. Like, spacing is real. I feel like that should be.
So The other one I have, I think it's an
Yeah.
ultra long shot, but let's say this team wants to get cheaper.
As
And
if the rest of this list hasn't been long shots. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to have I'm not advocating for any of these. I'm just trying to have a discussion, and you're assigning, I don't know, whatever to me. Here, this will be
You're
the
sounding
final.
like someone on Fox News. I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions.
I'm just trying to see your both sides. What's
Right.
wrong with that? Look, this team let's say this. I'm going to lay the groundwork here. This team wants to get cheaper. And what you're looking at probably is like, okay, they're going to get some smaller contracts in return. There's other teams that are being roped in to offset the cost. You're probably commanding the 2 first-round picks in Kel'el Ware, in addition to salary at minimum, Jaylen Brown.
All right. You found an exception. All right. You found a name. That's interesting. He's the primary wing.
I'm so shocked. I found it. I just named half the league. I was bound to find a few.
Yeah. Well, you finally hit right. Okay. Because you have the guard set up in Hero. You have Bam. Now you have like the primary wing who can focus a lot on scoring and the two-way play. So, look, I'm more interested in that, but I do have a question. And I think it's fair to ask. I think a lot of people are probably glossing it over because, it's the Celtics. Do they really take the regular season all that serious and whatnot? But like, it feels like Jaylen did not have a great scoring year this year, and I feel like last year also wasn't, at least in some parts. He turned it on in the playoffs, but like, I don't know if he's the same guy that he used to be a couple years ago. Like, can he regain that high level scoring punch, you think? I think he needs to in Miami specifically.
I just wonder, because you did mention last year, but like this year it felt like it was injury related. He was dealing with knee stuff for months.
Yeah, he was.
And that's
a fair point.
I think I would do it if I'm Miami, and I probably wouldn't even think twice. I'm more so thinking, is that enough value? If Boston was to go look to move Jaylen Brown, and I guess what you're trying to accomplish is we want to get someone like a young guy or a cheap guy who's playable, another cheapo mid-end contract. I'm assuming Andrew Wiggins is maybe part of that, and then some draft equity. This checks those boxes, but is there a team that, like Kel'el Ware, Andrew Wiggins, and 2 picks? Like that's, but I'm also like, well, would other teams just give up more for Jaylen Brown?
See, that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, the contract that's also attached to Brown, I actually have no idea how that's viewed around the league.
Especially now to where
Right.
I think, and I actually think you mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr., not on this podcast, but another one we did. He might end up being like a good case study in, well, how willing are teams to give out a supermax to these non-top 10 guys when they're eligible? Like, even
Did you already read my Memphis piece? Because you know what I mentioned in there? I mentioned in there that I think might reaching that point where we shouldn't dismiss the 140% extension limit out of hand with him.
Yeah, I mean, that feels almost extreme, but I guess based off some of the moments we saw against that like Thunder series, was it game 1? He had more turnovers than defensive rebounds.
Right. So that would start, by the way, the veteran extension limit would start at $32.7 million.
Maybe that's the right number, but I meant more so because I'm looking at it at Jaylen Brown, just how his contract would be viewed. Is just like, if Jaren Jackson going to be the first test of, not a top 15 player, and it's not even just about giving him the supermax, but like you could technically give him less than the supermax. We saw that happen with Rudy Gobert in Utah, right? But is he kind of the first inflection point of, no, like we're not even doing that for these guys unless they're just auto top 10, maybe like auto top 15 players, which Jaylen Brown in any given season, sure. As just an auto, no. And so now I'm wondering, as teams are structuring their books, how do you view that contract? And I think Jaylen Brown's a fantastic player. He could make all NBA in a given season. And it has, to be fair. Yeah. But that's why I think, well, then maybe Miami, if he was available in Boston, new ownership, maybe looking to cut costs, make the rest of the core more sustainable. But then the other part of me does think that there would be more palatable offers on the table, if I was to guess.
What? Right. For Jaylen, you mean?
Jaylen Brown, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, hey, can I throw out another name then? If you're worried about his contract, Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yeah. might be the right team if they're pivoting. Like if Memphis is pivoting off both him and Morant, which I wouldn't be against, honestly, might be
And
the
I
right
think that
team to
is.
learn to stop fouling and actually grab a freaking rebound.
Oh, he's not going to. I think the rebounding and is just not going to happen. I mean, and also, is he giving you enough of a scoring punch? He's a lot better as a scorer, but is it enough? Because this is costing you. It's the 2 firsts and Kel'el Ware. Like that is plus other stuff,
Right.
of course.
But to underline your scoring point, I mean, this dude averages almost 27 per game per 36. Like this is the volume.
Yeah, he was in the 90th percentile of self-created shot making efficiency this year. That's not that's a big deal for sure.
Yep. It's a good one. Like again, it comes down to where are we with him in a playoff context, because as I was writing that piece, whatever he does in the regular season, however impressive it is, he sort of drops the ball in the playoffs. He was very Julius Randle with the Knicks playoff experience. And if you're the Heat, I presume you're looking ahead and into a playoff series and not just how you fare in the regular season. So like that would concern me. I understand it's just a 27 game sample size for the playoffs for JJJ. I get that. Like perhaps a change of scenery, something else might.
And also it's different for any team that's acquiring him because you have to worry about free agency, but it's not. You don't have to worry about do we pay him the super max or close to it, because that's just immediately off the table then.
Right. I'm not opposed to it. I would
prefer Jaylen even on his current deal. I will say that.
Yes, I think the baseline there is higher, and it's the thing with me when I look at these guys who struggle in the postseason but dominate more or less in the regular season. It just it does affect how I value them money wise, and like in terms of what I would be willing to relinquish from in a trade market, for example. I'm like some people might be ready to just go get Jaren Jackson Jr. for basically whatever. I'm not there.
Do you have any other names that you like? Did I throw out enough names for you? Many of which were off rip. They weren't all in my notes.
I appreciate the creativity, sir. I really do. Very glad you didn't bring up Kyle Kuzma because I would have just left. No, so I think let me think.
I didn't expect you to go there right off the bat, but I do think that if you're the Heat, if we were taking the cold, distant perspective, which that's kind of our job to do, but we also try and live in the reality of these teams, tearing it down is a pretty palatable course, but just given their aversion to rebuilding, and look, you can argue about not you specifically, you can argue about that pick headed to Charlotte in 2027. That's not enough of a debt, like an impediment to me to say rebuilding shouldn't be on the table. Right. And if you think you can, for some reason, rebuild around Bam and Tyler Hero, sure. But I think the exercise that we just went through showed you how difficult that would be.
Yes. It's fun. There is one name that would just make me reconsider everything, but he's going to take so much more to get. That's Book, right? Like you would have to, Hero would have to be involved. Like it would almost be like a major retooling process.
Do you think it would become, so if you went, I don't know why Houston would then do this if they know that Miami's getting Book, but it's, hey, can we get any of those Phoenix Suns picks? And then you include that in the package with Phoenix might appreciate that. I mean, if you're trading Book, they might not even care about getting Hero. So it's just, you're going to have like, maybe Houston wants Hero because he costs less than getting Booker.
Yeah.
That's like fun. He's better. I think they'll be pushed back from Rockstar. Tyler Hero is better than Jalen Green on offense, right? Just the playmaking in general.
Yep. Yeah. Offensively speaking, yes. And speaking off of this season, yes. But Devin Booker is the one guy for me. Ironically, also for Houston, who you just outlined there. Like,
well, that's my point. Is like, well, I wouldn't if I'm Houston, I'm not helping another.
Right?
Team.
No, exactly. But it's kind of funny that I think Book specifically is a guy who can go in and solve a lot of these teams that are sort of not stuck. I don't want to say stuck, but like where you can see there's ample reason to continue this path that we're on by getting Book, because he can sort of elevate you, to a different tier. So, but the thing, like, rightfully so, Phoenix should be asking for the moon.
Yeah, and the Heat don't have the moon. They don't even have they don't have the moon. They don't even have the atmosphere, I don't think, to get into that.
Correct, and that's therein lies the issue.
Can you tell our listeners where they can find you and all the work that you do, Mr. Mort Jensen?
Yes, sir. You can find my work over at Blue Sky at MSJ NBA, where I link out to Danish pods, the NBA pod, Yahoo stuff, Forbes stuff, occasionally Sports Illustrated stuff. I need to go back and write sometime soon. I need to go back and write there. It's been a while, so you can find all my work over at Blue Sky.
Until next time, and as always, we leave the shout out to the one, the only, the future member of the Miami Heat, Mr. Paul George.